Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly felt at peace with yourself? Not because of someone's approval, not because of what you accomplished, but because you looked in the mirror and thought, I am enough just as I am. For many people, that moment never comes. We live in a world that constantly tells us you'll be happy when you lose weight. You'll be happy when you get that promotion. You'll be happy when someone loves you. But let me tell you something. Happiness and self-love don't come from the outside, they come from within. And here's the truth. Most people don't realize if you don't learn to love yourself, no one else's love will ever be enough. You'll chase validation, you'll overextend yourself to earn approval, and you'll exhaust your soul trying to fill a void that only you can fill. So today we're going to talk about the one relationship that defines every other relationship in your life, the one you have with yourself. This isn't about arrogance or self-centeredness. It's about creating a foundation of self-respect, kindness, and unconditional love for yourself. Because when you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you become unstoppable. Let's dive in. Why self-love feels so unnatural. Let's get real. Most of us were never taught how to love ourselves. Think back to when you were a child. How often were you praised for simply being who you were versus what you achieve? Society conditions us to tie our worth to external factors. Our achievements, our appearance, other people's opinions of us. And the problem with that is this: when your love for yourself is tied to things outside your control, it becomes fragile. If your looks change, your career falters, or someone criticizes you, your sense of worth crumbles. But here's the truth. Your worth isn't tied to any of that. Your worth is intrinsic. It's who you are, not what you do. Personal story, breaking free from external validation. I remember meeting a woman named Karen at one of my seminars. She was a powerhouse running her own business, taking care of her family and achieving incredible success. But when she spoke, you could feel the pain in her voice. She said, Tony, no matter what I achieve, I still feel like I'm not enough. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I'm worthy, but it never feels real. We worked together to shift her focus inward. Karen realized that she had spent her entire life seeking validation from others instead of giving it to herself. And the moment she started to love her self-flaws, imperfections, and all her entire world changed. Step one, treat yourself like someone you love. Let me ask you something. How would your life change if you started treating yourself with the same love, compassion, and care that you give to the people you cherish most? For many of us, this feels unnatural. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that being kind to ourselves is selfish. We've bought into the lie that our worth is tied to how much we sacrifice, how hard we work, or how well we meet everyone else's expectations. But here's the truth. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't show up fully for your family, your dreams, or your life if you're constantly tearing yourself down. Self-love isn't selfish, it's essential. The problem, you're your own worst critic. Think about the way you talk to yourself when you make a mistake or fall short of a goal. Do you say things like, I can't believe I messed that up. I'm such an idiot. I'll never be good enough. Why even try? What's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to have it figured out. Now imagine saying those same words to your best friend, your child, or someone you love dearly. You'd never dream of speaking to them that way, right? So why do you think it's okay to talk to yourself that way? Your inner dialogue matters. The way you speak to yourself becomes the foundation of your self-esteem, your confidence, and your sense of worth. If you want to build self-love, you have to start by becoming your own greatest ally, not your harshest critic. The shift, become your own best friend. What would it look like if you started treating yourself the way you treat someone you love? When someone you care about is struggling, what do? You listen to them with patience and compassion. You remind them of their strengths. You encourage them to keep going, even when they're feeling down. It's time to give that same gift to yourself. How to start treating yourself like someone you love. Rewrite the script. When you catch yourself thinking something negative, pause and ask yourself, would I say this to someone I love? If not, rewrite it. For example, instead of saying, I can't do anything right, say, I'm learning and every mistake is helping me grow. Celebrate small wins. Stop waiting for monumental achievements to feel proud of yourself. Start celebrating the small things, getting out of bed on a tough day, finishing a task, or showing up when it's hard. Recognize that every step forward, no matter how small, is progress worth celebrating. Practice self-compassion. When you make a mistake, remind yourself that you're human. Say, it's okay to stumble. What can I learn from this? Remember that growth isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, learning, and improving over time. Create a self-love ritual. Set aside 10 minutes each day to do something that makes you feel good. Whether it's journaling, meditating, or simply sitting in silence, make it a non-negotiable part of your routine. Personal story. Learning to love myself first. I remember working with a man named Jake who had spent his entire life trying to prove his worth to others. He overworked himself, overextended himself, and constantly put others' needs above his own. But no matter how much he gave, he felt empty. When we dug deeper, he realized that he had been neglecting himself for years. He had no relationship with himself, only with his expectations and his guilt. We started with one simple practice. Every morning, he wrote down one kind thing about himself. At first, it was hard. He didn't believe the words. But over time, those small moments of self-kindness began to shift his mindset. He stopped criticizing himself and started appreciating who he was, flaws and all. Jake told me later, for the first time, I feel like I'm enough, not because of what I do, but because of who I am. Interactive exercise. Write a love letter to yourself. Right now, I want you to imagine you're writing a letter to your best friend, only this time that best friend is you. What would you say? Would you acknowledge your strengths, your resilience, and your courage? Would you remind yourself of everything you've overcome? Take 5 minutes today or tonight to write that letter. Start with these words. Dear name, I'm so proud of you because when you're finished, read it out loud. Feel the words. Let them sink in. Why this matters. When you start treating yourself like someone you love, you change the way you see yourself. You stop waiting for others to validate you because you've already validated yourself. And here's the best part. When you love yourself, you teach others how to love you too. You set the standard for how you want to be treated, and you attract people who reflect that love back to you. So let's make a commitment today. Let's stop being our own worst enemy and start being our own greatest advocate. Because when you treat yourself like someone you love, everything changes. Step 2, rewrite the stories you tell yourself. Let me ask you this. What stories are you telling yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve? Here's the thing, your mind is constantly running a narrative. Every day, whether you're aware of it or not, you're telling yourself a story about your worth, your abilities, and your future. And those stories, they shape everything. If you've been telling yourself, I'm not good enough, or I don't deserve happiness, your mind will look for evidence to support those beliefs. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's the powerful truth. You are the author of your story, and at any moment you have the power to rewrite it. How the stories you tell yourself shape your reality. Think about this. Every decision you've ever made, whether it was pursuing a goal or holding back in fear, was based on a story you believed about yourself. If your story is, I'm not smart enough, you won't take the leap to apply for that dream job. If your story is, I'm not lovable, you might settle for relationships that don't honor your worth. If your story is, I'll never succeed, you'll stop trying before you even begin. But here's what you need to remember. Your story isn't permanent. It's not written in stone. You have the power to change it. Why we hold on to limiting stories. Limiting stories often come from experiences in our past. Maybe someone told you, you'll never amount to anything, and you believe them. Maybe you failed at something once, and instead of seeing it as a learning experience, you decided, I'm just not capable. Maybe you've compared yourself to others and thought, I'll never be as good as them. These stories get rooted in our minds, and over time, they become our truth. But here's the reality. They're not your truth. They're just beliefs you've carried for too long, and it's time to let them go. How to rewrite your stories? Identify the lies you've been telling yourself. Start by asking yourself, what are the negative beliefs I've been carrying about myself? Write them down. Be honest. These might include thoughts like, I'm not talented enough. I don't deserve success. I'm not attractive enough to find love. Challenge the lies. Once you've written down your limiting beliefs, ask yourself, is this really true, or is this just a story I've been telling myself? Look for evidence that disproves these beliefs. For example, if your belief is, I'm not smart enough, think about times when you learned something new, solved a problem, or succeeded at a challenge. Replace the lies with empowering truths. Create new, empowering beliefs that align with the person you want to become. For example, replace, I'm not good enough with, I am growing and improving every day. Replace, I don't deserve love with, I am worthy of love and connection. Replace, I can't succeed with, I have everything I need to figure this out. Reinforce your new story daily. Your new story won't stick unless you repeat it. Write your empowering beliefs down and say them to yourself every day. Put them on sticky notes, on your mirror, or in your phone as reminders. Personal story, overcoming a limiting belief. I once worked with a man named James who had spent his entire life believing, I'm just not a leader. This belief held him back from pursuing promotions at work, speaking up in meetings, and taking risks in his personal life. When we dug deeper, James realized this story came from a single moment in his childhood. A teacher had told him, you're not leadership material. And for decades, he let that one comment define him. Together, we rewrote his story. James replaced "I'm not a leader" with "I have the ability to inspire and guide others." He started taking small steps volunteering for leadership roles in his community, speaking up at work, and challenging himself to grow. Today, James leads a team of 50 people and says, "Changing my story changed my life." Interactive moment. Rewrite your own story. Let's do this together. Take out a piece of paper or open the notes on your phone. Write down one negative story you've been telling yourself. Be specific. For example, "I'm not good enough to follow my dreams." Now challenge that story. Ask yourself, is this really true? What evidence do I have that proves this wrong? Finally, rewrite the story. Create an empowering belief that supports the life you want to live. For example, "I have everything I need to pursue my dreams and succeed." Say your new story out loud. Feel the difference it makes. Why this matters. The stories you tell yourself create the lens through which you see the world. If your lens is cloudy with doubt, fear, and negativity, you'll only see obstacles. But when your lens is clear and filled with belief, you'll start to see opportunities, possibilities, and your own potential. You are the author of your story. At any moment, you can decide to write a new chapter on filled with self-love, courage, and possibility. So let me ask you this. What kind of story are you going to write today? Step 3, set boundaries as an act of self-love. Let me tell you something, life-changing. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are bridges to protect your well-being and honor your worth. So many people think boundaries are selfish. They worry, if I say no, I'll hurt their feelings. If I set limits, they'll think I don't care. But here's the truth. Setting boundaries isn't about rejecting others, it's about choosing yourself. When you set boundaries, you're telling the world, I respect myself enough to protect my time, energy, and emotional well-being. And let me be clear. Boundaries are not just important, they're essential. Without them, you'll burn out, resent others, and lose yourself in the process. Why boundaries feel hard? If boundaries are so important, why do so many people struggle with them? It's because we've been taught to associate our worth with how much we give to others. You've heard things like, good people always put others first. You've been told you can't say no, it's rude. And deep down you worry, if I set boundaries, people might not like me. But here's what happens when you don't set boundaries. You overextend yourself and feel exhausted. You say yes to things you don't want to do and feel resentful. You teach others to take advantage of your time and kindness. The truth about boundaries. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about teaching people how to treat you. They're about creating space for your own growth, peace, and happiness. And here's the most important part. When you set boundaries, you don't just protect yourself, you model self-respect for others. How to start setting boundaries. Identify your limits. Start by asking yourself, what drains me emotionally, physically, or mentally? What do I feel resentful about in my relationships? What am I tolerating that I no longer want to accept? For example, maybe you've been saying yes to every social invitation, even when you need rest. Or maybe you've been answering work emails late at night, sacrificing your personal time. I need some quiet time to recharge, so I won't be able to attend this event. I can't take on that extra project right now because I need to focus on my current responsibilities. I value our relationship, but I need us to communicate with respect moving forward. Stick to your boundaries. A boundary is only effective if you enforce it. If someone continues to push your limits, remind them of your boundary firmly and calmly. For example, I've already explained that I can't commit to this right now. Thank you for understanding. Release the guilt. This is the hardest part for many people. When you set a boundary, you might feel guilty at first because you're not used to prioritizing yourself. But remember, every time you say no to something that drains you, you're saying yes to something that nurtures you. Personal story, the power of boundaries. I once worked with a woman named Lisa who felt completely overwhelmed. She was the go-to person for everyone, her coworkers, her family, her friends, and while she loved helping others, she was exhausted. Lisa told me, Tony, I feel like I'm constantly giving, but no one gives back. I don't have time for myself anymore. We started by identifying where she needed boundaries. She realized she was saying yes to every request, even when it left her drained. So we practiced small steps, saying no to one request at work, carving out 1 hour each week for herself, and having honest conversations with her family about her needs. At first, it was uncomfortable. She worried about disappointing people. But over time, Lisa discovered that the people who truly cared about her respected her boundaries and those who didn't. They weren't meant to stay in her life. Today, Lisa says, setting boundaries saved my relationships and my sanity. For the first time, I feel like I'm living my life, not just giving it away. Interactive exercise. Your first boundary. Let's do this together. I want you to take a moment and think about one area in your life where you need a boundary. Maybe it's at work, in a relationship, or even with yourself. Write down the boundary. Be specific. For example, I will stop answering work emails after 7 p.m. I will take 1 day a week for self-care and I won't feel guilty about it. I will no longer tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully. Plan how you'll communicate it. Think about how you'll express this boundary clearly and kindly. Commit to enforcing it. Remind yourself that setting this boundary is an act of self-love. Why boundaries are an act of self-love? When you set boundaries, you're not just protecting your time and energy, you're telling yourself, I am worthy of respect, I deserve peace, I matter. And here's what happens when you start setting boundaries. You feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. You feel more confident because you're honoring your needs. You attract healthier relationships because people learn to respect and value you. Remember this, people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. And those who don't, they're showing you they don't belong in your life. Final thought on boundaries. Boundaries are not about keeping others out, they're about keeping yourself whole. They are a powerful act of self-love, and they are the foundation for a life of peace, purpose, and fulfillment. So let me ask you, what's one boundary you're ready to set today? Because when you set boundaries, you don't just protect your time and energy, you protect your heart. Step 4, make self-care non-negotiable. Self-love isn't just a mindset, it's an action. And one of the most powerful ways to practice self-love is through self-care. Simple acts of self-care. Physical care, move your body, nourish it with healthy food, and rest when you're tired. Emotional care, journal your thoughts, process your feelings, and seek support when needed. Joyful care, do things that make you happy just because they bring you joy. Step 5, learn to love your authentic self. Here's the ultimate goal. Stop trying to be someone you're not. Start loving who you are. When you embrace your authentic self, you free yourself from the need for approval. You stop comparing yourself to others and start living a life that's true to you. How to embrace authenticity. Identify what matters to you. What are your core values and passions? Let go of comparison. Focus on your journey, not someone else's. Surround yourself with support. Spend time with people who celebrate the real you. Final challenge. Commit to loving yourself. For the next 30 days, I want you to commit to one act of self-love every single day. It could be as simple as taking 10 minutes of quiet time or as big as setting a long overdue boundary. Because here's the truth. Self-love isn't a one-time thing, it's a practice. It's something you build day by day, choice by choice. Final words, the greatest gift you can give yourself. When you learn to love yourself more than anyone else, you unlock a life of freedom, joy, and fulfillment. You stop chasing approval, you stop settling, you start living for you. You are worthy, you are enough, and now it's time to start treating yourself like it. Let's go.